Hello and welcome to this episode of Kaleidoscope, the podcast. My guest today is Julie Lamb, who you're known by all sorts of names. Julie, I think Fire Dancer, J Fire Dancer was how the name that came up on Facebook through the Wellbeing Hub, which is where we met. Um, Julie, you're very welcome to our podcast, all about change and transformation. I'm going to ask the four questions and then pass over for you to tell us whichever story you would like to tell. The four questions, as always, are: what was life like before the change? What was life like during the change? What was life like after the change? And what does the future hold? Not that any of us have a crystal ball, but as far as you can tell.
Okay.
Over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction, Valerie. My name's Julie. I'm also known as J Fire Dancer, and my writer name is Joni Daniels. So I do go by a few different names, but J Fire Dancer is my practicing witch name. That's my dedicated name, primarily because I'm a fire element. I'm a Leo sun sign. I love dancing. And my favourite group, Duran Duran, have a couple of songs with those lyrics in: Dance Through the Fire and A Fire Dance Through the Night. So it seemed logical to have that name. So before the change, myself and my husband, we were looking after my elderly mum. We were helping out with the kids and the grandkids. So we were the people in the middle that everybody came to for help. I nursed my mum at home. Sadly, she passed away in 2015. With a brain tumour. So I was lucky that I had the skills to be able to nurse her at home until she passed away, because I'd worked previously as a PA for people with spinal injuries. So I did know how to look after somebody that was bedridden. So that was a very sad time, obviously. Myself and my husband had just got married the year before. So when mum passed away, it was almost the beginning of our married life. So that was what life looked like before the change. I'd given up work. I was working as a support worker for people with learning difficulties in the community. My husband was an auto electrician with his own business of 27 years, and we were the go-to people. So babysitting, whatever, we'd be there at the drop of a hat. Anybody's car needed fixing, anything at all, we were there. So, as I said, sadly, my mum passed away. She was 89. She'd had a really, really good life. And I enabled her to pass away at home, which was her wish. She always said, when I leave this house, it'll be feet first. And, and that's what happened. So we started, myself and my husband, Nigel, started our married life together then, really. And he was good as gold, because it's not every new husband that will put their new marriage aside to focus on the mother-in-law, right? But he was brilliant. So this was in the June when mum passed away. Now, my husband also raced amateur speedway, and we have a local race at the beach at Mablethorpe that is every year from, it's just started, so October through to March. They race on the beach once a fortnight. They do a Christmas race a couple of days after Christmas. So he said, I'm going to race in the Boxing Day race, or it was on the 27th actually of December. So he went off racing. He said, are you coming to watch? And I said, no, I'm going to stay at home and clean the house, because we were having people coming over that week for a party. So I said, you go and play with your friends on the beach and I'll clean. And I've got the house to myself, got the music on, I'm dancing, I'm cleaning. We sat down at lunchtime for a sandwich, and my phone rang. Now, my husband's photo came up, but when I answered it, it was his best friend. And I knew immediately that something was wrong. So he said, you'll have to come. He said, no, I just had an accident. Don't worry, but just get here as soon as you can. Well, the beach is about 10 minutes away from where I live. Son-in-law picked me up and we went straight over. By that time, they'd called the air ambulance, and I knew that was bad then, because they don't call that for no reason, right? So he'd had this crash. He'd hit the only obstacle on the beach for miles, which was a concrete outreach. He'd had a freak accident. And when I got there, they'd already sedated him. So he was not conscious because he was fitting and he'd gone into the water. So basically, a couple of friends had dragged him out, otherwise he was drowning as well. So because they couldn't control his fitting, they'd administered the drugs to make him unconscious. And he was on a stretcher and already been loaded into the air ambulance. So I was absolutely distraught, obviously. And I said, can I come with you? They said, no, we've only got room for the medics and the patient. You'll have to follow us. they take about, I think it's about 15 or 20 minutes to get to Hull, which is the nearest spinal unit to us, Hull Royal Infirmary. So they took him straight there and we followed on in the car. By the time I got there, they'd assessed him and they wanted to know what he was doing because he was covered in sand. He's also allergic to plaster, so he'd wrapped his knee up in cling film because the day before he'd had an off on our drive testing the bike. I'd said to me, "You sure you're going to go?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll be fine." And he would have gone anyway. So I sometimes question myself and say, why didn't I stop him? But we would have had an argument then, if he'd have gone and I'd have. So anyway, so it's like, whatever, do what you need to do. So anyway, so I had to explain to them why he was covered in sand, why he was got cling film around his knee, etc., etc. Anyway, they said, we're going to keep him in and we're going to take him up to the intensive care unit. So alarm bells were ringing then, and I was like, and they said, "Don't worry, it's just a precaution. We can't quite see where the injuries are. We want to do lots of scans and tests." Blah, blah, blah. So they admitted onto the ICU. Now there's two at that point. There were 2 units ICU at Hull, with 11 beds in each. So you've got 22 patients, and it was full, and it was Christmas time. So you can imagine the staff are they're incredible, and they're run ragged because each ICU patient has their own dedicated nurse because they've got that 24-hour care. But there was only one consultant, one registrar for the whole of that unit. I don't know what else they covered, but I mean, I don't know. I just know that they were short-staffed. So basically, they tried to take the breathing apparatus out a couple of times, and he wasn't responding. And this went on, so they kept him in an induced coma. You can imagine the family were there and his friends and everything, and I've just lost my mum, and now imminently my husband's on life support. So my youngest daughter was pregnant, expecting, this was Christmas, she was expecting in the March. So things were really, really not good. So anyway, after 9 days, we got to New Year's Day 2016. It was a Friday, and they said, right, we need to take him for an MRI scan. So they took him for the scan, which was off the unit. They have to put him into an ambulance to go to another part of the hospital. It's really stressful. And he was gone for about 6 hours. Now, when they came back, the consultant apologised to me for keeping us waiting so long. And I said, look, it's fine. I totally understand. And they'd had more emergencies coming in, so he'd had to go off and do brain surgery. And he said, right, he said, I just need to tell you that we've assessed Nigel's condition, and the MRI shows he's got very severe damage to his brainstem, and that's the bit that controls everything. So we think if he does survive, he's going to be hooked up to machinery. So do you know what his wishes would be? So you never want to hear somebody say that to you about someone that you love. It was horrendous. So anyway, I said, well, we'll discuss it, and I said, I really don't think, well, I knew that he wouldn't want to live like that because he does motorsport, and we all accept there's a risk in motorsport. So he'd actually had that conversation with his best friend. And they both said, so I knew they'd both said that if anything like that happened, switch it off. So anyway, that night I was playing in music. I used to go in every evening and play music with massive music fans who go to gigs all over the place. And I played in one of our favourite songs from when we got together, and I saw a tear come down from his face, so from his eye. And I said to the nurse, he's still in there. He's just cried. I've played him our song and he's in there. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry to, I don't want to dash your hopes down, but that's just secretions and that's what happens. It's the body getting rid of fluids. He's had trauma around his eyes, blah, blah, blah. But I knew it wasn't. I knew it was more than that. So I said to him, please, can we keep him on these machines and reassess on Monday? Anyway, they had a bit of a meeting and they agreed that they'd reassess on the Monday. I think because they were so short-staffed and everything else, they thought, well, that'll give us a few days breathing space. And on the Monday, he opened his eyes. So that was incredible for all of us because we knew then that he was there. We didn't know how much of him was there, but we knew he was there. And the first thing when he looked at me, he went like this. And I said, I don't know what you mean. He's still got the tubes in and everything. And then I realised he was asking me if I was okay for money. Now, that's the type of guy that he is. He just thinks about everybody else before himself. By the Wednesday, he was sat up in bed. And they called him Miracle Man. He was starting to speak again. He was still very unaware of what was going on because he was so full of drugs. So anyway, my family said, go home. I barely slept for that 11 days. I barely had half an hour here, half an hour there. And I was exhausted. I was also elated. And I was also having a spiritual awakening at the same time. So this is before. Now, I've started off with before and gone straight on to the during. So I'm kind of moving on to the next bit of the story. Is there anything you want to ask me about that before I carry on?
No, we're following. I'm following it.
Okay.
And if I'm following it, other people will be able to follow it as well. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, I sound quite jolly now, but I keep welling up and I'm stopping myself. So anyway, so when you have a spiritual awakening, it comes crashing down on you. And I do believe that it comes in when you need it the most. But also when you start following all the signs and everything like that, you can't, well, I'm speaking personally, I can't speak for everybody, but for me personally, I was not living in the material world anymore. I had gone up and up and up, and it was almost like I was floating and I was being told and guided and seeing connections and signs everywhere. And I knew he was going to be okay. I knew that we were going to be okay, and I just needed to get him home. And anyway, so I went home, and really my mental health exploded. But when you tell the men in white coats that, they don't particularly understand, because I think science and spirituality have massively conflicting ideas behind what's happening to you. So yeah, it was painful. It was incredible. I didn't know why people wouldn't listen to me. So I came home, stayed at my cousin's the first night because they didn't want me to be on my own. The second night, I came home to our house, and then one of my cousins and my son-in-law stayed with me. But I was getting more and more and more, further and further up. And by the Friday, on the 8th, I was then sectioned and sent to a psychiatric unit down near London, which is a couple of 100 miles away from here because there weren't any beds in Lincolnshire at that point. They knew what had happened at that hospital. They were fantastic. I said to them, I need to get well. I need rest, and I need to get well because my husband's coming home. I didn't know. And at that point, none of us knew that he'd lost most of his eyesight. We were just so happy that he was alive. So anyway, they managed to turn my mental health around really quickly. And we lost loads of musicians as well at that point. I mean, people that I absolutely adored, like David Bowie passed away while I was in hospital. Glenn Frey from the Eagles, Nigel's a massive Eagles fan, and we'd managed to get tickets like a couple of years before when they came to the UK. So there's all these things that are going on. I'm thinking there's so much bad in this world. What's going on? It was really bizarre. So anyway, they managed to get me home, and he came home the next day. And from then on, we were like, we're okay now. We're getting better, but we weren't, not really. We were adjusting. He was adjusting to the loss of his eyesight, the loss of his business. I was still grieving for my mum. I was still grieving for everything that had happened with him. The bills were still coming in. So we were, no money's coming in because neither of us were working. And things just kind of went from bad to worse. We accepted a little bit of help, but mostly we were pushing people away because we don't need help. We're the people that help everybody else. These things don't happen to us, but they did. And for those few weeks, so we're talking end of January. So for all of February, we were trying so hard to get ourselves back on our feet again. Bearing in mind, we couldn't leave the house. We tried to go outside. I think we went out once and came back in again. And it was so scary to actually try and go outside. Nigel was trying to cope with his eyesight and his anxiety, got massive brain injury. We were both suffering from anxiety as well. So we were really if there's a bottom, we were pretty much at it, to be fair. So then as well, we got other things going on around us, which I don't really want to go into because I don't want to give anybody else credit for affecting our mental health. But we'd ended up in court, and not through any fault of our own, I have to say. And the day after that court case, my mental health, I was really, really bad. Nigel was relying on me so much as well. He was at me all the time, and I can't blame him for that. He didn't know where he was or what he was doing. But I was in no position to be looking after anybody. I was still broken, but I was trying. But that extra added pressure of that court case broke me. And the next day, I was sat on our doorstep with nothing on but a blanket, staring at the sun, thinking, if I go blind, it'll see. Now you can see what kind of a state I was in. I wasn't sleeping again. Anyway, so my family then called the mental health team again, because I've got a crisis team, I have to say, but that's another story in itself. I ended up being sectioned again and then sent to another hospital, a different one. I was quite happy to go back to the first one and thinking, yeah, I'll be okay there. They sent me somewhere else. It was the middle of the night, and I knew when I got there I was in trouble. It was dirty, it was noisy. There was, if you can imagine being sleep deprived and doors banging like that every 2 seconds, I was on edge, I was frightened. I had no money, I had no phone, I had nothing with me. And I was supposed to go for a week's respite to give myself a break, to get some sleep. And I said, I'm here because I've got sleep deprivation. I can't. And nobody saw me till 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't see a doctor till 3 in the morning. And honestly, I was so frightened. Even the people that left me there looked concerned when they left. I think they were thinking, I don't know what we've brought her to. I'm like, take me home with you. I can't stay here. Anyway, the long and the short of it was, I was there for 4 weeks. I suffered physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, no financial abuse because I didn't have any money, I had nothing. And I had to get an advocate. I managed to sneak a phone call and get an advocate, and they came and got me out the same day and got me home again. And really, that's when our recovery started, when I came home. So, yeah, so that was during. That's 10 years ago. So that's April 2016 when I came home. So it'd be 10 years at Christmas since the accident. So since then, because I'd done a degree at Open University while I was working, I got the skills to do creative writing. I've always written things, and I'd really tapped into everything that had happened. And that's where my book came from. It wasn't because I wanted to particularly write a novel. I've never thought I've had a novel in. I think everybody has a book in them because everybody's got a story, right? But it's actually getting it out of here and onto paper. I've got those skills to do that. And it was a part of making sense of it all, if it could be made sense of. I couldn't not write it. I had to get it out there and tell my story. But I kind of turned it round a little bit because I didn't really want to include exactly what happened to Nigel. It was too raw, it was too painful. And because I'd ridden for the county like years before as an endurance rider, so I made it the story of a woman who'd had an accident on horseback, on a horse, gone into a coma, and then when she came out, had been sectioned. So I could tell both sides of the story in that one book without actually telling exactly what had happened to Nige. So I wrote my book, and yeah, say it's 10 years ago. It's called The Hub, and it's under my writer name, Joni Daniels. So and I think I've sent you the link. So that I'm very proud of it. And it had really, really good reviews. I did a few book tours, I had a publisher. And then after a couple of years, when it wasn't really making the sales, they said, oh, can you want the copyright back? I said, yes, please. So I had the copyright back and I self-published. And I'm quite glad now, because since then I've done an MA in writing for script and screen. And I've actually done a pilot episode and a whole series, like a pilot pitch document to send off, and I've got scripts with various companies that I keep sending out now. So it's kind of brought me to that as well. And amongst it all, my guides have been incredible. I work with some incredible beings, and I think I live in a daily state of gratitude. And I used to write my gratitudes every single day. I haven't done that for a while. I just wake up being grateful. I don't think you have to keep a gratitude journal to be grateful. You can just wake up and say thank you, which I do every single day. And for the opportunities that it's led us to. And also it's taught me about, I can say no to things too. I can, if I don't want to, we pretty much live our lives the way we want to live them. Nigel is incredible. He's done all sorts of challenges on motorbike. I mean, he'll always have. He's got petrol running through his veins. Anything with an engine, and it keeps, he always says, if he can keep good things in here, it helps to keep the bad out. So he keeps himself busy. And over the 10 years, he has adjusted. It's taken years to get to this point. I think the first 2 years, we were definitely in victim mode and just surviving day to day. The next probably 2 or 3, we were surviving. But the last 5, we've been absolutely thriving. We travel everywhere. We just absolutely, we do all sorts of talks. We've been all around the country doing stuff. And I have my nutrition business, my online business. And now the things that I've learned with network marketing, I've now brought together with a business partner, and we're bringing out a range of beautiful products that are coming direct from Sri Lanka. I'm so proud of everything that we've done, and when I look back from where we were 10 years ago, I can't believe that this is our life. I mean, we're going this week to see Bruce Lipton in Rotterdam, who is actually speaking on our wedding anniversary. And we had our honeymoon in Holland, so it was like, and we listened to Bruce a lot. I discovered him, I don't know how many years ago now, but we listened to him an awful lot, and I just think he's brilliant. And he's the guy that's come from science and gone into spirituality. So yeah, I pinch myself every day that this is our life now.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Um, Nigel's health and his eyesight and things, how is his, I know you said he's doing challenges and things, but how is his general health now?
Well, his anxiety is much less. He's okay in familiar surroundings, but and that stems from not being able to see properly. So he's got something called purchase retinopathy, which comes with a head injury and a brain injury, and it's the damage to the optic nerves. So it's the wiring. Funnily enough, with him being an auto electrician, it's his wiring that's damaged. So he has got loss in both eyes, but he has got some very limited sight in his right eye. He says it's like looking down a telescope, and the bit in the middle is absolutely clear. So he has to scan up and down. And funnily enough, most people think if you're blind, you need large print. Large print is no good to him because if it's too big, he can't see the letter. So it has to be a smaller print, and then he can scan up and down. And because he always says he's had 50 years of normal sight, he makes a lot of assumptions. So he has that framework in his head already. So he copes very, very well. Now, Saturday night, I was out with my friends. We went to a disco for grown-ups, which was brilliant. He would have hated it because it's dark,
Yeah.
it's noisy. So not only can he not see, it's crowded. So people don't know that he's visually impaired, and he can't hear either. So he's like, no, I said, he's like, I'll stay at home. I said, yeah, absolutely. But that just gives me a chance to let my hair down, because when we go anywhere, I'm the eyes for both of us. So
Yeah.
when we travel, if we go through passport control, through anything, if we're in a foreign country or a city or anywhere, it doesn't matter, London, wherever, I'm always looking out for him. And like, if I'm out with my friends, I'll say, well, mind the step, because it's so ingrained into me that I'm watching
Yeah.
out for everybody else. So he
Yeah.
does really, really well. His eyesight will never come back. It might degenerate due to normal eyesight degeneration anyway. He's always worn glasses all his life. But we were out today, we went to fetch daughter's dog. And I said, oh, my eyesight is quite bad in one eye, and I have to be quite near to read a number plate. And he said, I can see that number plate. He said, but can't see the car around it. So I can see the car, but I can't see the letters. And he can see the letters, but he can't see the car. It's really bizarre, actually. But he copes very, very well. He really does.
Excellent. Excellent. And
Yeah.
so do you use your Reiki often with him, with yourself, with
No, not
your
really. I mean, I
business?
do I do massage. I was a trained beauty therapist. That's what I did as well for years and years and years. But after the accident, I went more into the holistic side of it. So I do a lot of work with crystals, and I was doing a lot of crystal facials and things like that. And yeah, I'm not trained in Reiki, but
Oh,
I
beg
have.
your pardon. I thought you
No,
said
no,
in part of it earlier you'd done Reiki. Sorry.
no, but I can kind of feel it's very, when you're channeling energy, it comes anyway, doesn't it? I always put the music on. I really connect with music, and my guides come a lot through music. incredible. I mean, it's so random as well, but I think it's not just me. I think they do that anyway. And if you're tuned into it, it's all about frequencies. So you can pick up on that. How often have you gone into a shop or and thought about something and suddenly a song comes on? It's not coincidence. It's not random. And I absolutely love that. I love it because they're giving us all these signs all the time. And I think the difference now is I know that I am in this material world, but I can follow my guides safely. But I do have to ground myself quite a lot. So,
Yes. Yes.
I think that's really important. And obviously putting the protection in it. And there's times as well, I do a lot of spell work, but I bring in the elements and I research everything and I kind of I know what I'm doing now, really. But there's always so much to learn though, isn't there? You never ever finish learning. And I'm proper education junkie. My teachers at school would laugh because I was horrendous, such a rebel. I went to a grammar school and they weren't really prepared for the person that wanted to be Toya Wilcox. But anyway, that's another story. But I think I've done all right since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, just you've taken me back into my grammar school days, and it wasn't Toya Wilcox. There was somebody several years younger than us, and it was Madonna, and she'd have
Oh,
come in with
amazing.
the wee part lacy glove and the and he just took me straight back to seeing her, and they really were, and the bandana tied, and
Yes.
all lacy and everything. Yeah, our school were really not prepared for it.
Yeah, but I mean, I've been back since both my kids went there, and they've got a new headmaster now. And I went for a tour around because they did a bit of a reunion thing. And I said, oh, so, I enjoyed my school days, but I don't, I think they were kind of glad to see the back of me. And he said, oh, we said we like people with spirit. I said, well, I've got that all right. And thank goodness, because if I wasn't such a feisty, strong person with that, I've never, ever, ever, and we spoke about this the other day, let that spark go out
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's when if that goes, you finish. You have to
You've
keep
done.
that
Yeah,
spark alive. And I
yeah,
thought every single day in that hospital, they are not going to win. I'm too stubborn. They're not going to win. I am going to know what medication they're trying to make me take. And I don't care if they frog march me to isolation because I'm being awkward. I want to know what I'm putting in my body. And I've got
yeah,
that right to know.
yeah,
So I'd argue back, and then of course it was a bit like, being back at school, oh, she's a troublemaker, blah blah blah. But I wasn't, I just knew my rights. Anyway.
And I think that's the very distressing thing is that you're in a place where people, because you're not well, and people are meant to be caring for you, and you ended up going through an absolutely horrific. And you do have that spark and you do have that fight, and you had the guides on your side. What about all the people that don't?
I don't know,
That
and
that,
it
that
rips my
completely
heart out.
lost that fight? Absolutely. It's heartbreaking that anybody has to go through that at all. But if you don't have an advocate, you don't know that you can have an advocate. You don't have a phone to be able to, or the ability, as in your case, to sneak a phone call. You know, awful, awful. I say our health service is not so much a health service as an ill health service nowadays. But that's besides the
Well,
point. Well done you for
thank
having
you.
managed to advocate for yourself and getting
Thank
yourself
you.
out of there, and for holding space for Nigel to do all the healing that he has done to the point that he's doing all the challenges that he is. What's his next challenge? Does he has a
Oh, well, you'll laugh at this one. Bed of nails.
lovely?
Yeah,
Okay,
and
yep,
yeah, and his friend wants to put a concrete slab on top of it. Those pneumatic drills. So I just leave them to it because his friend works at Rolls-Royce. I mean, he's a really highly qualified, intelligent guy, but he does all this crazy stuff. And him and Nigel are really good friends. So I'm like, well, I'm leaving you to it. That's fine. I don't even think about what he's doing until the day he's doing it because otherwise it just destroys your peace. But I
yeah,
want to
absolutely.
support him. So, and I just want to make a point about the psychiatric units. The first one that I went to were amazing. They really were understanding. They were lovely. The food was beautiful. The room was like a Premier Inn kind of thing. It was absolutely spot on. I can't fault them. In comparison with and I was very, very poorly at that point. in comparison with the second one, it was like going from that to, I don't know what you'd even say, back to Victorian times, Bedlam maybe.
Faulty
I don't know.
Towers.
Pardon?
Faulty Towers.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Maybe worse than Faulty Towers. Maybe we're insulting Faulty Towers. Julie, thank you for being so open and honest and vulnerable, because that's not a your mother dying and having to cope with that change, having nursed her, is hard enough. Nigel being ill is hard enough. To then have a mental breakdown slash through, as I would call them, because if you recover from it to the point that you see that you were going through an evolution,
Yes.
it becomes your breakthrough rather than just a breakdown. And sometimes a breakdown is just a breakdown, and it can be, by the signs of things, burnout was probably what was going on for you. To have all three within the same year and still be not just having survived, but now to be thriving is fabulous. And it's testament, as you say, to that spark of life and holding on to it, no matter if it gets really, really tiny, but holding it and nursing it and willing it back into a flame. That little bit of rebellion that you had at school, that determination, assertiveness, and it's not, you listen to people and they say about cheeky teenagers and all the rest, and I'm like, those are going to be our entrepreneurs, and you've got to have that drive, you've got to have that. It just doesn't fit within our school system. That's the problem. Our schools aren't built for people who have a spark of individuality. We're all individuals, but some of us spark that little bit more than the others. So they've gone through all three and now be thriving is testament to your relationship and to your own ability to recover and to educate yourself and to listen to your guides and to fall into that vulnerability and allow them to catch you. So inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. As you know, when we talked before, I then finished with the 3 last week questions, which would be your favourite book, your favourite phrase, and what you would tell your younger self.
Okay, so my favourite book, it's really hard to narrow down because I'm a massive reader, but I'm going to say The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton. I absolutely adore this, and I do listen to this a lot at night as well. But I'm gonna sorry, I'm breaking the rules here. But Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert as well, because I think she's fabulous. And I've kind of manifested or willed into existence a meeting with Bruce, and I met Elizabeth and gave her my book last year. So those 2 are amazing.
And you've another wee book there that might make it onto your favourite list. I recognise the colour.
It's mine. It's my book, The Hub. I just got it in a pile. So,
because strangely enough, when you're self-published, you pick and my cover. I think mine's here as well. My cover is exactly the same as yours.
I mean, how random.
What are the chances?
Yeah, well, exactly.
What are the chances?
It's not by chance, is it? No, and I think when we spoke before, you said about Kaleidoscope and the butterflies, and I always describe my mind as being full of butterflies, and I just grab one occasionally and develop it, and then let the others fly away, and then they'll come back. So it's really lovely. So my phrase would be, I'd rather regret something that I did do than something that I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I think, what's the worst that can happen?
Absolutely. No, quite agree.
What would I tell my younger self? Stay weird, because that's your superpower.
Brilliant. I love it. You're like me. I tell people, when they're, I don't like being called weird, and I go, well, find the word that works for you, unique or whatever. I love being weird. I take my weirdness out and I wave it about like a big flag, and it scares all the boring people.
Exactly that.
They're not boring in their own life with their own people, but they would bore me. So take out your weirdness and give it a good
give it a good wiggle.
Wiggle, absolutely. Julie, thank you so much for your time, for spending time with us, and for telling your story and being so vulnerable and allowing us to join you on your journey. I hope you and Nigel stay as well as you are currently. Um, Seriously hope you enjoy Lipton. That'll be a fabulous weekend. I'm so pleased you're getting to meet him as well. Get him to take your book with you and get him to sign
Oh,
it. Give him your book as well. Take a copy of yours and
I
give it to him.
intend to.
Um,
Absolutely. Thank you.
and stay well. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You too. Thank you very much, Valerie. Thanks, everyone. Bye.